Hi, my name is Vinny from Bellwether team. As you may already know the process of user setup in EPMX using the employee screen. Through this screen, you can of course create users one by one by giving all the required details like user ID, name, password, etc. But this process allows you to create one user at a time only. What if you have multiple users to create in one chart? So, in today's video, we're going to cover that part. I'm going to show you the import process for employee file in EPMX. To start off with the process, we go to Utilities, Imports. Under the import, we go to Maintain Control File. Once we land on the screen, the very first field is Maintain. So what I want to maintain today? The employee. The next is employee character set, which is defaultly set to Windows 1252, and we're gonna keep it as is. As a last step for our import, I'm gonna pick up the file from my desktop. I'm going to pick this one, and now before I do import, let's take a look at the file, that how I have prepared it. As it has a designated format, it has to be in that format only. So let me take you to the file. This is our employee template. It's a generic template we use across clients. The very first column is a transaction code. Now what does that stand for? Transaction code, it can be A, it can be C, or it can be D. Now what is A? A stands for add or activate. If I want to create new users to my EPMX site, I would use a transaction code as A. If I have some deactivated users in my sites, I can use A as well to activate their IDs. If I have a set of users to which I want to update any information, I want to correct their name, I want to update their email ID, phone number, etc., or maybe the approver's setup, so I can use C for those users. Now be thoughtful that you may want to do this from employee screen directly if you have one or two users to correct. However, if you have multiple users, like 10 or users to update with their information, then for sure you may want to use the import process. So last transaction code is D if you want to deactivate any of the users in EPMX. Once I'm done defining the transaction code, I have pre-filled the user ID, first name, last name, and email ID. That's all the mandatory details. The rest of, like phone number, address, are not mandatory but optional. If you want to provide this detail in EPMX, you can. Column O talks about purchase limit to the users. If you set to 0, that will make sure that even $1 amount of request or a purchase order goes in approvals. If you define the purchase limit as, let's say, 100, so this user gets the privilege to create requests or order up to $100 without seeking any approvals. So most of the time we keep it as 0. Next is approval limit. Now here is the second catch. You may notice that I have listed the approval limits in a descending order. That means I have listed my all approvers at the top first, and then my rest of the users like requester, buyer, receiver, etc. Even when I have listed all of my approvers in the top rows, I have ensured that I'm listing them in a descending order with their approval limits. And the logic behind is when I do the import, system can read and identify the approvers for each of the user. Once I'm done defining my approvers first and done defining all of my rest of users, I define up to 5 levels of approvers to them. So here I'm taking an example of defining up to 3 levels of approver for now. Column V, again, it's an optional field which is proxy approver. This field is utilized when I want to predefine if J. Dennis goes on vacation, so who will be the approver on his behalf. So I can define A. Gooden. As in when A. Gooden goes on vacation, James Dennis goes on vacation, system would automatically route all the approval requests to A. Gooden. I can do that, or I can also do it from the employee screen later. And the last, another mandatory field, which is password. So I have kept the generic password and user can change it later. Once I'm done filling all of these details on my Excel file, I save it on my desktop, and that's the last check to this template. Because when I'm doing the save as, I need to make sure I'm saving it in a .csv format only. So the type of the file has to be is .csv for the import. My file is saved, and now I can come back, pick the file, and click on import. This would tell me the 10 records have been imported successfully. If any row or error, anything would have got errored out, I would have been able to find this out immediately on the screen itself. Now, that's the one step. I created all my users' ID in EPMX. However, they are yet to be granted with the module access, which is driven on the user classes. So there are again 2 ways of doing it. You can again go to the employee screen and define the user classes to each user one by one. The second option, you go to utilities, you go to user class submodule access. Under the screen, you define, you select the user class first, the user class that you want to define. So let's, for example, I want to assign requisitioner user class to my users first. And after selecting the user class, I click on copy to users. And I'm going to select these users to be assigned with this requisitioner user class. So I can pick multiple users in one time and assign all of them the same user class or the EPMX module access. And likewise, I can go back and pick a new user class, hit save to save the record. That's important, and it's done. Now I can click cancel, pick the new user class, go to copy to users, and give the other users like Erica, Annette, and click on save. Now these 2 users will be assigned with the buyer rights, and that's how I give them the access. So this is all the 2-step process of creating users and giving them EPMX module access. That's all in this video. I'm going to present more videos and gonna talk more about the import process, what all different things you can do the import for. So stay tuned.